Thanks, Victoria. I'm Erin Haynes, editor-at-large at the 19th, and it is now my pleasure to introduce Coach Dawn Staley, three-time Olympic gold medalist and two-time women's college basketball championship coach. We'll discuss her career as a trailblazer and a leader, her thoughts on Title IX implementation today, and the work that she's doing to support WNBA star Brittney Griner, who has been wrongfully detained in Russia for over 100 days. Coach Staley, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you sit at the intersection of so many of the themes that we're going to be talking about this week. And I just really can't think of anybody better to ask about the legacy and the impact of Title IX and the work that's really left undone on gender equity in general in this country. So thank you for doing this. Let's get started. I think I probably want to start by just asking you what Title IX means to you. And if you can share with our audience about the direct impact Title IX has had on your life, on your career.
I think Title IX has just given me an opportunity to be in a space that if it wasn't for that law, I don't know where half of us females would be. So I was able to go to school, get a full ride at the University of Virginia. I was able to continue to play professional basketball, and then obviously, that has led to me being getting into the coaching profession, and in that space, I've been allowed to just have the opportunity to excel in this sport that's so very dominated by male counterparts.
Yeah. I mean, how have you've had such a storied career, which is my kind of polite way of saying you've been here for a minute, you've been doing this for a while. How have you seen gender equity in sports kind of evolve or change over your career? And what is probably the major way that you still see it needing to change?
Well, I mean, it's change in that, I mean, so many young people are involved in sports, so many young females are involved in sports. That's one. I mean, another way that it's changed, but it's still the same in that even in this space, we have to fight for some of the things that we deem equitable to our success. I mean, it's a necessity to our success. And I say equitable and not equal because there's some things that for instance, that I would like in our program that the men's basketball coach wouldn't necessarily need in his program. And I think I'm in a space where I'm able to see those things, say those things, and more times than not, when it's brought to someone's attention, there's change, especially in the place where I work. I can't say that is true for every female coach on any level, not just basketball. I mean, there are Olympic sports, there are other sports in which some women have been fighting their entire careers, and some will in the future continue to fight that. I've been very fortunate to be around people that they may not move at the drop of a hat, but with a little coaching, they move. And I'm happy that I'm a part of that movement. And because I'm a part of that movement, I want to lend a voice to what's happening where I live, where I work, in hopes that someone can utilize the same strategy.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I mean, because here you are, a two-time winning, women's college basketball coach, and you're still fighting for equitable resources. I mean, talk about an example of that. Where you are, where you had to speak up for something specific that you needed for your program that maybe wouldn't be something that the men's program would necessarily think about, or maybe they didn't need themselves.
Well, I mean, I could probably just point. And I don't want to selfishly look at this, but this is probably the biggest example I have of explaining this part of it. At the University of South Carolina, my 14-year career there, we've had sustained success over the past 10 years. And my male counterpart did not have that same type of sustained success. Now he was pretty successful throughout his stint at South Carolina, but if you looked at where he started, his salary started to where his salary ended up being, and then you look where my salary started and where my salary was up until last fall, he got more of a raise than I did. And our success versus their success is not comparable. So I chose to utilize that instance to raise the awareness of equal pay. Now, my deal overall is equal, but the year to year wasn't equal. But the most important thing to me was just making sure that my overall salary contract negotiations ended up being the equitable to what the men's coach was getting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't think that was selfish, actually, Coach Staley, because you being transparent about that means that it's not just for you, that other coaches, that other folks in other programs can look at what you did and hear your story, and they can understand how to, you're kind of giving them a roadmap for how to advocate for themselves. And it seems like that's something that's important for you. Yeah,
you do have to self-advocate. You do, because I find that a lot of people are just really, they're okay. They're comfortable with, if you got a pretty good living going on, you don't want to rock the boat. You just want to live comfortably, and it may not be right, but there are some out there that want what their worth is. And we don't oftentimes get our worth, and we don't oftentimes know how to pursue that. And sometimes it's just knocking on your boss's door and just sitting down and have a conversation. I think the most important thing with me throughout this occurrence was that I had a relationship with my boss. And that's important. When you have a relationship with somebody, you make it very difficult for them to tell you no. You do. If you have no interaction with your boss, and the first time you go in and talk to her or him, is the time that you're asking for a raise, more times than not, you're not going to get it. But if you've had that, and you walk in, you say, I got a serious conversation. I want to have a serious conversation with you. You go through the steps of why you think you deserve to get a raise or deserve to get equal pay. They'll hear you out. They will. They'll hear you out. And more times than not, it's difficult for them to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you already talked about kind of the issue of pay equity. I want to ask you about what you see as really kind of the biggest barriers remaining to gender equity in sports. What can you say about the disparities? You talked about pay, like I said, facilities, airtime, promotion, respect. What would you say are some of the big disparities that still remain?
Well, the biggest disparity remains in probably our tournament, our NCAA tournament. Whereas, and most people won't know that the men's basketball tournament is its own entity. It used to be March Madness, was all about men's basketball, but we were just kind of, we didn't even utilize the March Madness branding,
right?
Because that wasn't ours. It's since changed, but every other championship, it could be women's basketball, it could be softball, it could be women's soccer, it could be baseball, it could be all those other sports are all bunched in together as the other championships. Mm-hmm. So if you take if you have to put on our championship and all those other championships, you're going to end up in the red.
Mhm.
So we look like we're all losing money.
Mhm.
And men's basketball looks like it's just all in the black, and they're paying for the rest of, the rest of our championships. Well, if you can treat women's basketball just as a sport, as its own entity, like men's basketball, then I think you'll find that we can be revenue producing.
Mhm.
We're not revenue producing because we're in with all the other championships that it takes a whole lot of money to put those championships on. So when we're able to be treated like a sport of its own and see how much money we can drum up or lose, because we could lose money, I doubt it, but I think we can be a high performing, high revenue producing sport that you can certainly get the return on that 10 times over.
Yeah. And to your point, it's not about the lack of talent. It's about the lack of investment and the commitment to elevating you all to the same degree that men's sports are elevated, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's about the total investment. If you invest in women's sports, if you invest in women, I do think you bring a different perspective. You bring, we think differently. It doesn't mean we think we think about things that don't produce and make things better. We just think differently, and it's okay to think differently. Like I think Black people think differently. Yeah. So that's why I think you should have women. I think you should have Black people a part of the decision-making process in wherever there is an issue, wherever there's a company, wherever you should have all those perspectives in the room. And you may not go with that perspective, but you certainly can help you build up your decision. It just reinforces that what you're thinking about is good or not. So if you don't have that perspective, you're just thinking singularly. And when it's just a singularly thinking group, you may not be thinking about other things that may come up that can derail that. So diversity is truly important. I think hopefully we're figuring that out in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talked about what these higher education institutions can do to really make Title IX more real. Is there something in terms of policy that you think the government still needs to do? And really, what can the rest of us do to really invest in the way that we're talking about in gender equality in this country?
Well, I think with anything, you have to make it a priority. When someone makes it a priority, things get done. The decision makers, the lawmakers, the politicians, all the people who move our country, if they make women a priority, we will be just that. If they don't, we'll scratch and claw, voice by voice, to shed light on it until it becomes a priority.
Yeah, and 50 years after Title IX, why do you think that still hasn't happened? We're half the population. We're more than half the people who vote in this country.
It's comfort, people are comfortable with the way they do things. They may not necessarily be right, but think about this. If, I could live comfortably, just doing what I do every day, like go about my business, run our women's basketball team, win basketball games, win championships, and just, okay, I'm good. No, because it's not about that. It's about advancing our sport. It's about advancing women. It's about lending a voice to things that will bring about change in our sport. And if you bring about change in a sport, there's a high possibility that there'll be change in corporations, in Fortune 500 companies, when it comes to diversity, when it comes to Black women, when it comes to women in general. So that's what we have to do. That's what we have to continue to do, is use our voices as a tool of power.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of that, I mean, you're doing just that. You are making the release of Brittney Griner from Russian detention a priority in your life, something that you don't have to do, but something, well, maybe you do feel like you have to do it. I want to talk to you about that because you've been such an unrelenting champion for her. You're making videos every single day. I mean, talk about why this is so important for you. Talk about why more Americans should care, and talk about maybe why you think more people aren't paying attention to this.
I mean, Brittney, I consider a dear friend, someone that I coached, I've known over the past 10 years. And she's a wife, she's a daughter, you know, she's a legend, she's an Olympian, she represented this country, she's a WNBA player, she is highly recognizable. And I feel bad that she has to spend a third of a year of her life and counting in a Russian prison that our country has deemed her being wrongfully detained. When someone's in the wrong, when they're in the wrong, if they're detaining one of us wrongly, then we need to do something about it. Obviously, our government has said just that. And I don't think they're just sitting on their hands on this. I don't. I do think these things take time. But I'm hoping somebody's really thinking about Brittney every day and what she has to endure in a Russian prison. You know, she's 6'8". You know, they probably don't make beds that she can comfortably fit in. There's probably a language barrier. There's probably a food barrier. If I know her, you know, Brittney likes the good honey bun. You know what I'm saying? Like,
probably no honey buns.
Right. None. Yeah. So, you know, but aside from that, she's one of us. Whether you like what she believes in or how she lives, she is one of us. And we need to take care of one of us. I know I looked at Trevor Reed's interview. Like, you know, Trevor Reed doesn't want to leave. It's a Marine essential. You don't leave one man behind. We're leaving her behind. And there are other people that are locked up in, you know, abroad. I don't really know them, but let's pull them all out. Let's all feel good about bringing those that are being detained or arrested in any country wrongfully. Let's bring them home. Let's all hands on deck and act as if this is someone that we've lived with every single day of our lives. And once we're able to equate that with Brittney, then when we put enough pressure on people to move a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have to ask you, because you kind of alluded to this. I mean, is Brittney's identity, is that a reason for why she is still being detained, do you think? Is it part of the reason that more people aren't paying attention? I mean, she's obviously a star athlete in her own right, but she's not, you know, one of these men's basketball stars.
Well, I mean, I don't know what it is. I think for me, it's an American. She's an American citizen that's, again, has been deemed wrongfully detained. It could be just a regular American over there. If I knew them, I would be advocating for them, because I wouldn't want anybody to have to endure what she's been enduring for the past 113 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to close by asking you kind of what is next for you in this fight for gender equality and equity in our country, in your profession. What do you see as the work ahead for you?
I mean, I can only continue to use my voice as a vessel to bring light to it. And I mean, there are a lot of ways. Like, I think my voice is probably the most powerful thing, and then utilizing it on social media and social media outlets. If people want me to be a part of a resolution, a board, or whatever it is, a group of people that could just normalize or give a normalized perspective on just, I mean, on human beings. Like, we're human beings, and it's so hard to comprehend that you are treated differently because of the color of your skin. You're treated differently because of your sexual preference, or anything. Like, I mean, that is, that is so ungodly when you're able to be the judge of someone because of, what they believe in and how they want to live. Like, it's so judgmental of people to be that way. So I'm just gonna try to shed light on this and hopefully change hearts, because that's what it is. You have to change somebody's heart, and that is truly, truly, truly hard to do.
Yeah, well, I know you don't just shed light, you do call it out every time you see it. And that's what makes you a champion, not just on the court, but really in life. And we are so grateful for your insight and your tremendous leadership in sports and beyond. And we know that you're going to be involved in the struggle for equality for all of us. So thank you so much again for being part of this new generation that is helping to make Title IX and gender equality real in this country.
Thank you.